Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for staying for the afternoon. It's very much appreciated that you're all here still and off at the different events. Here, we are going to debate how important is leadership in the success of net zero. And we'd like to thank Active Building Centre for putting this on with association with University of Gloucestershire. Now, joining me to discuss this topic, in no particular order, we have Nicholas Anderson. Now, Nicholas is the Chief Operating Officer, COO, of Spirax-Sarco. Now, he went to university in Sao Paulo, and he was at Harvard Business School, so he's obviously very clever. He speaks 4 languages. English is one of them, luckily. Also Italian, Portuguese, and Spanish. Before he joined Spirax-Sarco, he was with John Crane in Latin America and also in the Asia Pacific, which is part of the Smiths Group. He joined Spirax-Sarco in 2011 and became CEO in 2014. Now, Spirax-Sarco is all about steam solutions, and that is from, I can't even read my own writing here, humidifier products to heat transfer solutions. They have 1,200 specialist engineers and offices in 62 countries. But we're fortunate because their head office is in Cheltenham. So we're very lucky to have Nicholas with us today. Welcome, Nicholas. Stuart Norman read civil engineering at Leeds University. He works as a design engineer in various companies, including Skanska and Balfour Beatty, and he joined the Keltbray group in 2010. He became the MD in 2012 and has helped Keltbray become a leader in piling and ground engineering. We were hearing a little bit about that earlier. Now, the company believes it has the world record for the deepest pile ever constructed in London at 79.3 metres. According to LinkedIn, Stuart cares about education, environment, health, science and technology. And I'm sure he'll bring all those passions to the debate today.
Yeah, thank you.
Robert's been around already a bit today, so you've got to know him a little bit already, because he's been chairing and doing a fantastic job. He's a man with a huge amount of energy, and he seems to be able to turn his hand to everything. He started his working life as a shoemaker before he put together a group, an alternative comedy group called the Joeys, which toured Europe in the 1980s. He came to fame, however, in his role in Red Dwarf, which he played for 35 years. I have to say, he looks far too young. And he's also done various other TV shows, as well as writing 16 books. He has always had a love of cars. Apparently he started driving, I'm not sure if this is legal or not, but at the age of 11.
Yeah, not on roads.
Not on roads, okay, fair enough. Okay. And he went from a petrol head to an EV guru. When he founded Fullycharged, that was the world's #1 clean energy and EV podcast channel. And if you want to see them, there are 500 apparently, so there's a few there out there on the internet. I did watch one of them last night, and they are fascinating actually. So he's doing a really good thing with EV, and we're very grateful that you could spare time from your busy schedule to join us today. Now, last but not least, we have a stand-in at the last minute. Thank you very, very much.
My pleasure.
From Lee Chambers, who is the Chief Commercial Officer here at ABC. He stood in for someone who unfortunately can't be with us today. But thank you very much for Lee. Now, luckily I was chatting to Lee earlier, so he did actually give me a little bit of his own background, because he's really a solar power man originally, is that right?
Yeah, for the last 15 years.
15 years in solar power, and he is full of enthusiasm and energy for ABC. And it's wonderful to see, because if we can get a tenth of that energy out there into the business world, we will certainly have a better place. He's doing a fantastic job here, and what he's doing is to be applauded. Okay, so thank you very much, everybody, for being here and for joining the panel. Now, our first question is about your own businesses. So, what are you doing in your businesses to contribute to net zero, and why are you doing it? Can we kick off at the far end with Lee?
Yeah, of course.
Shall I? Oh, yeah, my God, yeah, we should be doing that. Sorry. There you go.
Okay.
So hopefully everyone can hear me. Is that on?
I think it is. He's going to turn it up. Let's try it again.
Can everyone hear me?
Nope.
Yeah.
It's on. Yeah, it's on. Technical difficulties?
Oh, there we go.
There we go. Perfect. Thank you, everyone. And as I said, I'm straight in at the deep end here because I've had 2 minutes' notice on this particular panel, so I'll give it a go for ABC. How important is ABC leading net zero? I think you've heard lots today about ABC and its role. I believe that we should lead from the front. I'm definitely somebody that does that anyway, and I know that I'm surrounded by a team of people that also do that. I say to my team every now and again that it's our job to blaze a path into battle for others to follow, and I firmly believe that that's what we do. I don't think you can have a net zero agenda without leaders. You know, there's lots and lots of people who are quite happy just to accept the established wisdom and do nothing because it's too difficult to change or they don't feel comfortable doing it. But I think it's the same with any endeavour, that if you want to get there, you need people with will and people who are prepared to put the extra effort in. And also people who are prepared to listen, people who are prepared to encourage, people who are prepared to drive change. And that's what we do at the ABC. You know, we are here to facilitate change in whatever way, shape or form that happens. We're here to help people. We're a trusted friend, and we are funded to do that by Transforming Construction Challenge. And my director down there, Sam, who's been just speaking to you all about exactly the same thing. You know, the fact that you're all here today indicates to me that there is some will here to make a difference. And I do believe that we can make a difference. If I didn't, I wouldn't be here. So that's kind of my view on this whole thing. Thank you.
So I feel very inadequate because I'm a really rubbish leader. The one thing I've done right in the Fully Charged show in the company is start working with a gentleman called Dan Caesar, who is here, who is very good at leadership and management and understands how to run a business, because I genuinely don't. But what I feel that we're doing on Fully Charged in those terms is, I mean, our little motto that we don't use too often, but it's the guiding principle for us, which is stop burning stuff. And I know it's an absurd aim, it's not possible, but as an idea, as a notion for the human race to aim at, I think it's a really important thing, that if the more things that we can do to live in the way that we do, to live comfortably and safely, which don't require combustion, I think we should grab every one of those advantages whenever we can. And that's really what our show is trying to communicate, that there are ways. And I think it really was very much down to electric vehicles, solar panels. The first day that I drove 70 miles, very meagre distance, when I knew all the electricity came from solar panels. Nothing had been burnt to create the fuel that transported me. I then plugged into a water mill that was generating electricity in Dorset, which was 70 miles away from where I live. I recharged the car and drove 70 miles home on electricity that came from rain. And that was, I thought, that is special. 5 years before that, I could not have done that. It would have been 100% impossible. And the fact that that technology started to emerge, and I'm talking 10 years ago, and the mill is called Telesford Mill. It's beautiful if you ever get the chance to go and see it. It's an amazing place. It's still working. It has to be turned off 1 hour a year for maintenance, and it generates all the power for a small village in Dorset. So that we constantly come across these incredibly possible, plausible, functioning, workable solutions to all the problems that we face. And that's really what keeps me going. I should have retired, but I'm going to keep going because I'm really enjoying it, and I'm seeing amazing developments. Amazing people, many of whom are here today, that run this. I mean, I think this is an incredible place. I've not been here before. I'm really impressed with what's here. So we try and cover that, to communicate that to the widest audience possible around the world, and thankfully we're getting a bit of response. So that's why I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, we're doing a lot in Spirax-Sarco engineering, and I think to help put that into context, I need to probably share with most of you what is it that we do, because most people will not have heard about Spirax-Sarco, despite the fact that we are, a FTSE 50, but a FTSE 100 company in the UK, and we got global operations in customers in 130 countries, employees in 68 countries, but we've been around for 130 years, and the main products that we make are around control and management of steam. There isn't an industrial process that doesn't require steam. Most people think of steam as transportation, the old vessels or steam engines. Steam is the most effective way to transfer energy into an industrial process. And by definition, every industrial process is taking raw materials, some energy, some labor, and transforming those raw materials into a product. And therefore, if steam is the most prevalent way of transferring energy into an industrial process, steam is used in every modern industrial process. And therefore, our products touch everything that you're wearing, you eat, or everything in this building in one way or another. And that gives us a sense of responsibility of the impact that we can have. And because we've got a presence in so many countries, and we are a leader in that field, global leader in the field of steam engineering, then we feel that we've got an important role to play in our country, in our society, and around the world in helping decarbonize the generation of steam. Because the most common source of energy, or fuel, to transfer the energy into an industrial process is coming from fossil fuels. Now, since we were founded 130 years ago, we've been working with our customers to help improve the efficiency of those processes, so reducing the consumption of energy. The energy source has changed over the years. It was coal. If you go back 100 years ago, people were burning coal to raise steam, and it's moved on to gas. And we want to continue to, as the main source, but you've got biomass, you've got all sorts of other sources of energy. But we're helping lead that transition, and we want to help lead that transition to other sources of energy. And one of the businesses that we have in the company is about electric heating. And so being able to generate the heat that's required to raise steam, but not using fossil fuels. And so we're doing a lot of that, and in the last couple of years we've really stepped up our initiatives very strongly, not only to increase our own sustainability, not only to improve our own sustainable performance in terms of energy consumption, carbon footprint, water usage, and etc., but help our customers all around the world, help our supply chain, and help the communities in which we operate. So we've challenged ourselves to become a leader in the industrial sector in terms of leading sustainability. And if I could just drop two more pieces of information, I think, to help put into context. The products that we make, just in the steam division, in the steam specialties division, the products that we make, and this is a certified number, externally proven certified number, have helped last year our customers save 15.8 million tons of carbon emissions. 15.8 million just through the use of the products that we manufacture. Our own carbon footprint is 40,000 tons. And we help our customers save, last year alone, just in carbon emissions in one part of the group, 15.8 million tons. So that gives you an idea of the positive multiplication effect, and that's where we feel we've got to take such an important role in helping change this reality quickly.
Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Yes, thanks for the introduction. I'm not sure if I could compete with 15.8 million tonnes, so I'll do my damnedest. I suppose leadership in general, what do we need? Well, we need clearly defined goals, and I think they're starting to come through. They're starting to be a little bit clearer. We need leadership through the likes of industry bodies, so the Transforming Construction Challenge, UKRI, Innovate UK, they are starting to provide that leadership for companies like my company, ourselves, Keltbray, to follow that lead. And I think we need to recognise that there are some excellent ideas out there, and some of us have been looking for avenues to promote and develop those ideas, which is where we were about 3.5 years ago, when we had the idea for the hyperbar, but we didn't know how to bring it to market and how to bring it to fruition. So what companies like Keltbray are doing is investing in these innovative ideas, investing in understanding new materials and technologies that are coming through, so zero pore cement-based concretes, the likes of earth-friendly concrete and cement-free concretes and the like, and recognising the limitations of those concretes and start to push them much harder, so more testing, more understanding. We know a lot today about the time that it takes to get products through codes, standards and understanding of those. But as leadership and leaders, I think we need to have a willingness and understanding to take risk. We need to have a willingness to drive change. We need to have the awareness to see what is wrong or what could be improved in the way that we do things. And, you know, I'm a contractor, so I know there's plenty of ways to improve. And Sam's already talked a lot about the number of mistakes that are made, the quality mistakes that are made. And all of this is, as leaders, I think we need to identify and look at processes and ways of trying to improve them. So the hyperbar is one such thing. We've taken a traditional technique, traditional board piling technique that hasn't been changed in 70 years, and we've completely radicalised it to take out anywhere from 30 to 70% of the materials in the first place. And those remaining materials, we looked at using low carbon materials. So that's one thing that we're doing. The next thing we're doing is recognising that there's a free energy source out there, there's thermal energy for us that's not being utilised in construction at all because of the current quality issues that are concerned with installing thermal pipes in deep board foundations. So we've solved that problem as well. We've also solved the problem of taking a construction technique and primarily manufacturing it off-site. So again, those quality issues we're overcoming in that way. So throwing it back to leaders, you know, it's having the belief in those kind of ideas to see them through all the way through to the end.
Thank you. Excellent. I know I'm preaching to the converted here, but we know that some businesses talk the talk. But do you think it's a minority thing still to be green as a business? And if you do, what can we do about it? I'll start with Nicholas.
Serves me right for holding the microphone. I think this is an important. We are at a pivotal moment in our society. I think many people talk about that, but we've seen this, and we were talking about it earlier with our colleagues. We've seen a shift, and a true honest shift, not greenwashing, but yeah, there's always going to be people out there greenwashing, but I think there is a true honest shift in terms of wanting to do something and do it in the right way.
Sure.
And I think your question about how important is leadership. I think leadership is always important in any activity you do, but in my eyes, one of the most important factors of any leader is to have the courage to make the right decisions, and those right decisions sometimes are not the ones that make you popular, many times, but you've got to have the courage to make the right decision. We often say that, I like to say that management is doing things right, but leadership is doing the right things. And in this case, around sustainability, the right thing is really to mobilize all of our resources, whether it's a company, whether it's an individual, or a citizen, part of society. We've all got a massively important role to play, because this has been the climate change threats have been coming for the last 250 years. Right? This has been, since we invented the Industrial Revolution 250 years ago, we've started burning fossil fuels. to power economic prosperity. But we haven't got another 250 years to fix this. So we're going to all have to do and step up the way that we do that. Personally, in our company, we're doing a lot. We're spending a lot more money on new product development, as you were doing just now, mentioning just now. In fact, we've got a new thermal battery that we've applied for a patent, and that we're going to be trialing in this building. It's supposed to be installed and commissioned early next quarter. We're developing lots of other different technologies to decarbonize the use of steam. We're investing heavily, for example, start with ourselves, right? So with our own homes. So to decarbonize our own plant. We've got about 30 manufacturing plants around the world. One of the larger ones is here in Cheltenham. So we're starting here at home. And we're looking to decarbonize the whole of our site here in Cheltenham. We wanted to do it in less than a year, but we're discovering what are the constraints and what are the difficulties to achieve that. So it might take us about 18 months because of external constraints. The main one being, for example, power supply. We can't get the power distribution grid to get enough power to the new sites so we can decarbonize the applications that we have today. So you start encountering real life difficulties. All of these investments don't give you a positive return, an economical return. So that's another challenge. You've got to have the courage to say, we're going to do it because it's the right thing to do, and we're not going to use the excuse that it's going to be financially unattractive investment, which for the accountants in the room is usually a shocking revelation, because how come you're going to invest money in something that's got a negative return? But at the moment it is. You know why? Because the cost of electric energy today is 6 times the cost of gas. 6 times the cost of gas. So for the same kilowatt, if we're decarbonizing our operations, our operating cost is going to go up.
That might be changing, of course.
And we're going to, it might change, but you've got a big gap. You've got a 6 times gap. So, but we're still going to make that decision, because it's the right thing to do, and over time we're hoping that things will change. But you've got to start. So I think it's about taking those concrete new actions. We're building our new headquarters office here in Cheltenham. It's being designed by one of the panelists that wasn't able to make it. But with incorporating into the new building the latest technologies and making sure that we're building our offices for the future and that kind of stuff. Sorry.
Absolutely, thank you very much. I mean, really. And I know that Lee's got strong views on this, and in terms, because talking about it earlier in terms of that phrase greenwashing.
Yeah, thank you. I heard something recently which made me stop and think, and it was really simple. And I've shared it with a few people today, and I think maybe it's an opportunity to share it with all of you. The phrase was, quite simply, we are the first generation to feel the effects of climate change. We are the last generation to be able to do something about it. If we don't do anything and we don't act, what the hell legacy are we leaving for our children?
All I've got to say on this particular thing with greenwashing is I actually think there has been huge amounts of greenwashing with an enormous amount of different businesses right across the whole spectrum. And I think that's fading everywhere except possibly, well, very obviously, the fossil fuel industry itself. People whose entire economic reason to exist is of extracting and refining and burning fossil fuels. And I'm going to add to that supermarkets. Because supermarkets do a lot of stuff about, we recycle, and no, I don't want to buy a litre of milk in a plastic tub, and you have no choice. And I don't want to buy some grapes in a plastic tub, but you've got no choice in the supermarket. And it is their responsibility. And I've done it once at a local Tesco's where I got to the checkout, and I was very nice to the lady, and then I unpacked everything, left all the plastic wrapping on the side, and put it in a bag that I brought myself. And they're fine with that. They don't mind. They're quite happy if you do that. But it's a massive pain in the butt to do. I've done it once, and I felt like such an idiot. And all the people who were queuing up to pay, they didn't like me. But I mean, that stuff is enforced on us, and yet it's given the responsibility for recycling it is us, and we feel guilty. Well, who is making that plastic wrapping? The fossil fuel industry. And so there are people that do annoying greenwashing, and particularly the fossil fuel industry. I think we can point the finger at them because they are trying to do that. And I've been involved with fuel companies that are installing electric chargers and making a huge hoo-ha that they're investing in clean technology, and then they don't work. And then you get really upset because they're not putting the money in to keep them working. But anyway, that's a whole opposite of another thing. I'll shut up now because I'll start swearing.
Yeah, I'm not sure we can add too much to that. From what I can see, there's much more challenge coming through these days to the facts and the figures that get quoted. So you need to be really careful as to what you're saying. You need to be able to back that up because of historical greenwashing, but also because the likes of people in the audience here today and others, the wider society, are becoming much more well educated in terms of what sounds realistic. They're doing their research, they're going online, they're buying more ethical products. It's people's behaviours that are driving the change and interrogating us here today if I need to come up with better products.
Yeah, and the only comment I'd make on greenwashing is that
Let's just add something.
it's green, it's mentioned, at least it gets some sort of publicity, even if it's it's not something that's driven through. At least if their businesses feel the need to talk about green, that's at least the first step on the process. So I'm not, as long as everybody's going in that direction, whether they're on the first step or whether they're on the step number 99, we've got to all go in that direction. So greenwashing, okay, but let's not slate people too much. At least they're mentioning the word green.
If I could add something, I spoke so long I should have added it before, but on the greenwashing matter, I think there's a seismic change, and we've seen it in our industry over the last couple of years, 3 or 4 years. Some of the stuff that we are trying to promote nowadays, a few years ago, only just a handful of years ago, you couldn't get an audience to listen, you couldn't get a customer to pay attention to, you couldn't get... but we're seeing a massive change, and we're seeing that massive change driven by society. And to reinforce your point, it's those kind of actions that send a message and that start engaging people. And you're seeing, especially with the younger generations and the people that are thinking, looking at us as leaders and thinking, well, what are you guys doing about this? And demanding, and we're seeing it, for example, from investors, from the investing community, suddenly taking a massive... So the good news is, there is a change. You can't get away with greenwashing anymore. I think that's the message you just... And whoever's still not taking this as seriously as they should, I think the message is that window of opportunity for greenwashing is closing very rapidly.
Agreed.
Can I just say that many of us, myself included, growing up with the likes of Prince Charles and his views, so is he a bit out there, saying has greenness become a bit more of an in vogue thing these days? Well, people's attitude towards what Prince Charles has been saying for many, many years has actually come full circle. Myself included.
Okay, last question from me. We talked a little bit about cost, but what are the barriers that businesses face when it comes to this agenda? To start with,
Start with somebody.
Start with Robert this time.
Oh, I don't know that I have a relevant answer. I don't run a business that would. I suppose we need more solar panels. We only drive electric cars. I don't think we're really in a position to comment.
Okay.
You will be much more.
Probably. I think from a personal and professional point of view, I get a lot. We can't afford to do it. But actually the reality of it is we can't afford not to do it. And we should stop measuring impact in terms of pounds and pence and start measuring it in terms of CO2 offset, because then we're actually looking at the problem, the real problem. And I know that the accountants out there will flog me to death for this, but you know, if we carry on doing things the way we've always done them, we're always going to get the same result. We are not going to change. We are going to end up back in the same place we started. And we haven't time to do that again. So that's kind of how I feel about it, and that's kind of what I think reflects from the ABC. We're on a mission. We're not going to get off it. We need to just get on with it. We need to make the change. We need to make it happen as leaders, as a community, as people in general. We just need to stop talking and start doing.
Just very quickly, I've just thought of something, which is externalities, which is the thing that I didn't even know that word 10 years ago. I didn't even know what externalities mean. But I think we're now, far more people are aware of the, you know, this costs this much for a litre, and this is what we do with it. But what happens to it after that? Well, it's some gas that we burnt, and it's gone. And you go, no, that's an externality. That has a cost. I mean, this is to your point, that you go, well, I can't afford to do that. Well, what you're not doing is actually, in the long term, much more expensive. And it's much cheaper to do this thing, you know, I mean, electric cars are the perfect example. They are still slightly more expensive when you buy them. But my God, from experience, from 10 years bitter, hard experience, they are a lot cheaper to run. And I just had a car serviced, I had an MOT yesterday. And I remember taking petrol cars in for MOTs, and they needed a new catalytic converter, and a new this, and a new fan belt, and a new that, and it cost a fortune. This cost nothing. I didn't have anything done. They drove it in, they tested it, the lights work, the brakes work, thank you, off you go. That's, you know, it's cheaper. Electric cars are cheaper to drive. I'll shut up.
I think from my perspective, what we've been doing in our industry, construction foundations, we've been putting more and more concrete in the ground for building after building after building. You know, some of the buildings in London, they might last 20, 25, 30 years. We don't reuse the foundations. We don't use the foundations because of what was discussed earlier, warranty issues, knowledge issues, quality record issues, risk issues. Wouldn't it be great if somebody came up with something that could be reusable? Wouldn't it be great if somebody came up with something that could be extendable and perhaps re-warranted? I'm not sure there.
That's great, thank you. I'm now going to open up to the audience for any questions. Oh, sorry, apologies, Nicholas.
Okay.
I was going to say, apologies.
No, I was, you know, from our own experience, because we're doing all of these things and we're learning as we go ahead. What are the obstacles? What are the difficulties? And they are multifaceted. You have cost obstacles. I mentioned that already, where you get negative returns on investments. You've got technology barriers. We're still trying to develop the technologies. We've made commitments, you know, to achieve net zero scope 1 and scope 2 by 2030 and scope 3 by 2050. But we know that we haven't got, and we've got a roadmap to achieve scope 1 ours, scope 2 by. But we know that to get there, we're still going to depend on some technologies that are not fully developed, for example. What we're committing, and we're going to find the way along the way. But you've got some technology barriers. You've got infrastructure. I mean, yes, we should all be moving to electric vehicles. I'm definitely not buying another petrol car again. But where are we all going to charge them? Where's the power generation and where's the infrastructure to distribute the power to get to the charging points? I saw the government saying they're going to invest in putting more charging points, which is important, but you're still going to get the power to the charging points. So there's a lot of areas that we've got to. I'm working particularly on the side of helping industry decarbonize. Yes, our company is working on that, as I said. But you know, we're all going to be competing for that same energy. And so I think the barriers, the limitations are very varied, but we just got to face them. You've got to face them and tackle them and go ahead, and we just got to start making those commitments to get there. But they are on multiple fronts. It's not straightforward.
Absolutely. Thank you. Okay, now are there any questions from the audience? Oh, yes.
This is just a quick question for Robert on the subject of greenwashing. I'd be really interested in his thoughts on this. Why is it, you think, Robert, that being in charge of this thing can build one of the biggest, most wealthy companies in the world? Why is it they can build oil rigs in North Sea, but they can't maintain
I really hope not. So, just for those of you outside the hectic bubble of the electric vehicle industry, there was a company called Chargemaster that put in lots of chargers. They were bought by BP. Shell and BP have been buying companies of varying sizes in the electric vehicle space for a while. And when they first did it, they invested a lot of money in it, and they put in lots of new chargers, and it was all wonderful. And one of my good friends works at BP Chargemaster, so it's a very personal thing. And now all you hear, we didn't mention it with Dale Vince this morning, but there was a long period of time when, if you wanted to charge your car and you saw an Ecotricity charger, you drove on to find one that would work. And I can say that now because Dale's not in the room, but there was a time when they weren't the most reliable. Well, that role has now been taken lock, stock and barrel by BP Chargemaster. And it's a great shame because they made a big commitment, and that you're absolutely right, it's a very good point. They can maintain and run a massive oil rig in the middle of the North Sea, which is an incredible engineering challenge and logistical challenge. That works, but they can't run one little charger at the back of a Tesco's, and it's kind of annoying, and we shouldn't make them embarrassed. So they've run out of greenwash paint, basically, at the moment. They need to restock.
Yeah. Well done.
Has anybody else got a question they'd like to raise? Yes?
It's actually a point for us. It's not so much a question. It's something I'd like to highlight as a small business. It's very easy when you're successful to say, let's go green. It's very easy when you're successful through COVID-19 to say, let's go green. It's exceptionally hard, and this is where leadership comes in, regarding innovation, education, and support from large companies to smaller businesses in the Gloucestershire region. We've come through it, but I know many businesses haven't. So how do larger companies support the lower companies coming through that are trying to do this change? Very quiet.
Yeah, I think it's a good point, Carl. You know, let's face it, lots of businesses have suffered, but nobody could have predicted a pandemic, and whilst it's accelerated some agendas, it's slowed down others. And I agree that, you know, we should all together as a community be, I think, trying to help each other. There's the only one way we're going to get to zero carbon. The only way we're going to do it is together. We're not going to be able to do it any other way. But you know, yeah, I agree with my colleagues here. There are going to be hills to climb. There's going to be financial implications. There's going to be struggles. But at the end of the day, I believe that if we try together, we've at least got a chance. Yeah. And I think that you're right, Cole. That, you know, we do all have to give a bit, and maybe take a bit, and maybe help a bit. But if we all do it, then maybe it's not so bad. I don't know.
It's a good. Can I add?
Yes,
to that?
Of course. Yeah.
That's a very good point you raise, if I can add to your comment. I think, yes, we've all got to do our part in it, but yeah, as a larger company, we think we've got an obligation here to help support not only our customers that are large and small, all sizes, but also our suppliers. Right? So we've got to be working with our supply chain, many of whom are small, many of which are in developing nations that haven't got the support or the structure. And again, we're all on the same planet. There's only one planet, and so it's no good just fixing our backyard because, you know, the air has this characteristic; it moves around the world, and so we've ultimately got to attack it on a global scale. So, I think the larger companies like ours have an obligation to help the smaller companies. But you raise a very important question, and that is, you know, I mentioned earlier the fact that it's anti-economical in some way. I want to go green. I want to decarbonize my operation. I don't know what business you're in. But we've been doing some studies. I've personally been commissioning some studies from our team and looking at the impact on the different economic sectors that we service. And as I said earlier, we service all sorts of, every sector that you can think of. And without boring you with the numbers, but just to give you the bottom line, in the food and beverage industry, for example, some of which are small, you know, and there's an intense use of steam, lower temperature heat, etc. The intensity of the use of steam and the differential between gas and electricity means that for an average food and beverage company, if you want to suddenly decarbonize all of your operations, your operating costs could go up by 10%. in the food and beverage industry. And some food and beverage don't make that amount of money. So that would put them out of business, right? If you try to put it onto your customers, but your customers, then could choose to buy from your competitors. So it is a complex situation, and smaller companies, I think the government has a role to play in terms of supporting with funding, but funding is important in terms of access to the funds to do it if you don't have those funds yourself. But it's still going to protect your economic model, because if not, you'll green yourself out of business. And so they are practical now. It varies. That's a bit of an extreme in the food and beverage industry. I've looked at it for pharmaceutical or for hospitals, for example. It could increase the operating cost of a hospital by 1 to 2%. So yeah, there are complexities, and I think your point around small companies, my belief is that smaller companies will get there later, and that the larger companies will have to just trailblaze this, and hopefully along the time it will be easier for the smaller companies to follow, because the cost differentials or the technology developments and all of those things, and government policies and all of these things are going to be required. But I think it is a bigger challenge for the smaller companies and for the smaller economies in developed nations. We should not forget that angle also. Good question.
Can I just add to that, Nicholas, if you don't mind? I'd just like to add one thing. Obviously, this is Gloucestershire based, and we're here at the ABC in the middle of Gloucestershire, and Cole, of course, you are from Gloucestershire. Here at the ABC, we're offering quite a lot of different things. You can see by looking around the site the work that we do. Yeah, we offer services and we offer support. What we're also doing is turning the upstairs, once we finish this event, into incubator space and accelerator space that companies and small companies can come in with ideas or potential products or solutions or anything, and we're there to try and help them. I mean, we're really fortunate that we've been funded by the government, we've been funded by TCC, but we want to try and use that to do some good and help some of those smaller companies on that road, so they don't have to always arrive late to the party, that they might actually be able to get there ahead, and maybe their products can be introduced. So we are doing everything we can to help that local and national supply chain issue. We're there to try and help businesses grow, develop, and come into something different. We have the engineering support staff here, we have facilities here, we also have the opportunity here to have incubator and accelerator space. So if you've got something that you want to bring through, by all means come talk to me. Our door is always open. Thank you, Jen.
And likewise with GFirst LEP and the growth hubs, they're there to help businesses, particularly so smaller businesses, to help them grow, help them design their strategies in terms of carbon neutral, because it's definitely where we've all got to go, one way or another, and the more help you can get along the way, the better. Finally, I'm just going to ask each of our panellists, if I may, for 3 tips, because we all want to do something, but 3 tips in terms of what you think your business or you as an individual can do to help with the climate change issue. I'll start with Stuart.
Thanks, Ruth. You did give me notice about 45 minutes ago. I think business-wise, don't be afraid to embrace new technologies, new products, new materials. Do your homework, ask your questions. We talked about greenwashing. I'm sure there'll be some companies out there that are bigging up their credentials in terms of maybe perhaps technical performance of some of their products that do need to be interrogated. So we've been through that cycle already and looked at that in particular. I think from a personal perspective, I'm trying to eat less meat. So I think whatever you can do, each their own, but I think we've got to look at these little things that start at home. And I think also, we've talked a lot about innovation and sustainability, but let's not forget, as a gentleman over there said, don't forget the day job. There's still got to be something that's got to pay the immediate bills to allow you to then invest in the innovation and give you the headspace time to think of new ways of doing things. But you can't just do that day in, day out. You have to do the day job first and foremost.
Thank you. So, if we're going to change, then we've got to start ourselves, right? So it's got to start at home, I agree with you. and we've got to start making small changes in what we do in our day-to-day, in our habits, because habits run deep, and it's not easy to change them because they're ingrained in the way we do things. So, looking to I don't buy any more plastic water. Plastic bottles for water at home, for example. We're looking to have and do more recycling and more eco-friendly, if I could use that word, packaging and things that we do. But I think the other thing for all of us, not as individuals and as companies, is let's not be ashamed to start talking about this. And there's a role that I think we've all got to continue playing in helping educate people and helping change people's way of thinking about these things. And the expression greenwashing comes for a reason, but we should not be embarrassed to get out there and start talking about this openly and changing the way that we do our own things. I've been trying to do that in my personal life at home, and we're definitely changing the way that we do our business. And I think the tip is, look at everything that you do and think of how could I do it differently to achieve a better outcome from a sustainability point of view.
I'm going to do it as quickly as I can. I think the only example I've had is to try and set an example, and I've tried to do it with my children. I've been told I failed by my children. I've tried to do it at our house, and when people come around to our house and see that we have solar panels and batteries and really cool water heaters and everything, and they go, "Oh, you're amazing what you've done," and then I'm going to use one last rude word today. My wife is Australian, it's part of her culture, so you can't criticise her for it. And she said, "Yeah, you got solar panels, but you're still an arsehole." So, there's always a balance. There's always a balance in all those things. But I mean, I think that has, setting that an example, and we've discussed this here before, in terms of electric cars. If one person on the street has an electric car and they drive it every day, and all the fears and anxieties that people have about them, and they just see that person just using a car every day, and they go, "Oh, maybe they're all right." And that's been proven with surveys. One person gets an electric car on the street, and 2 years later, 10 people have got them in the same street, so that happens. So that's one thing, and I've stopped eating meat, which wasn't hard. I've got a vegan daughter. She made my life much more miserable when I was eating meat. I'm still a lazy vegetarian. I sometimes eat fish, but actually, I've worked in farming, and it's an enormous, we haven't mentioned that today, but that has a vast impact. Factory-farmed, mass-produced meat is really not a good idea. I think people should eat meat, but I think it should come from really expensive cows in really posh fields, and you only have it once every 2 months, and it's really, really nice. And I'm happy to kill the animal. I'm not squeamish about that. But when you see a factory farm, I've been around a couple. It is brilliant, and we really should move on from doing that. But that's another thing altogether.
Thank you. I only found out about the 3 tips at the very start of this interview, and I sat and thought about it, and I thought, really, it comes back to being brave, being bold, not accepting the established wisdom of compliant tools, making changes, little changes, maybe, in your own personal life, in your professional life, in the way you run your companies, and the way you do things. We can all make improvements. There's no sitting on your laurels here, is there? We've all got a mandate to improve, and I think if we can encourage improvement and acceptance, then we're probably where we need to be as a country, as a people, as a planet. If we don't, well, we're all going to suffer the consequences, aren't we? So I suspect that it's better to focus forward than worry about what we can't change. That's really all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you very much. Personally, I think I'm going to take away what Dale said this morning about the 3 areas. So it's travel, energy and food. And if you just think about those 3 areas, and think if you can do one thing in each of those 3 areas in the right direction, and we all do something, then today would have been a great success. Thank you everybody for being here, and thank you to our panelists.